The O'Reilly Factor from Ohio is on tonight.
The thing I love about you is you're quite provocative.
Me? President Bush lets his guard down, kind of.
If I was such a genius on the economy, I would have predicted the meltdown in the first place.
We'll talk about the bad economy.
What do you do when somebody says it's about to fail?
The precarious Afghan war situation.
Are you optimistic about Afghanistan?
It's going to take time.
And President Obama.
You need to ask him, not me. I'm the retired guy.
A factor event, decision points. President Bush on the State of the Union.
That's what the folks, I think, want to hear.
Caution. You are about to enter the no-spin zone from Dayton. The Factor begins right now. Hi, I'm Bill O'Reilly reporting tonight from Dayton, Ohio. Thanks for watching us. We are here to interview former President Bush on Veterans Day. A few hours ago, I spoke with Mr. Bush at the National Museum of the United States Air Force, just a few miles outside of town. As you may know, the president is on a book tour promoting his presidential look-back, Decision Points. Because he has given a number of TV interviews this week, my mandate tonight was to shake him up a bit, advance the conversation. I told the president that my questions would be a bit different, that I was representing you, trying to ask things that pertain directly to your life. He was fine with it. Kind of.
I want to do an interview that's a little bit different than the pinheads you've been talking to all week. So, when word got out that I was going to interview, lots of people called me up and stopped me in the street and said, look, I want you to ask the president this, I want you to ask him that. But it all centered around the economy. And then the last chapter in your book is about the meltdown in the economy.
Correct.
I thought it was a very interesting chapter. But here's what I don't understand, a lot of other people don't understand. Why didn't you, as President of the United States, know that this derivative mortgage-backed security con was in motion? Because you say, I was caught by surprise.
True. There is an awareness in that last chapter that we saw something amiss because we tried to get the government to regulate Fannie and Freddie. But I don't know of anybody in my administration who saw the enormity of the collapse. In 2003, because of the implicit government guarantee and because we were worried about some of the investments that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac were making, that Congress, much to our chagrin, said, no, we're not going to regulate it because they're very powerful entities. And so, to some extent, I feel okay about anticipated crisis. The other thing, I didn't really see the enormity of it. I really didn't. I don't think this was a matter of regulation. I think this was a matter of people making bad investments.
Okay, but the problem is, for me, and I think millions of people watching, that we expect the federal government to protect us from con men. Now, you're the guy in charge of the SEC, Christopher Cox, who I know very well because I went to school in Boston with him, okay? Now, Cox is a guy that's supposed to give you the heads up that, hey, you know, there's something really not right here.
Well, I think a lot of the levels of government, we didn't see it coming. Well, the question is, what do you do about it when you're the president? I mean, it's one thing to be dwelling on why we didn't get it right. But in my case, the story is, what do you do when somebody says it's about to fail? There's a tone in the book that basically says I distrusted Wall Street, and I probably because I was raised in West Texas. And yet, I had to make the decision to use your money
to bail them out.
To bail them out, yeah.
But
because the options for me were, do I gamble on a depression or not?
Right. When I saw you out there going, hey, this thing is serious, I went, this thing is serious.
It was serious, but your question is, why didn't we see it?
Yeah.
It was...
but that frightens me, because it could happen again. It could happen again.
Of course it could happen again, and it's happened before. This was a confluence of events, and so I try to take the reader through the trade deficits, the money coming to the country, the investments, the building of the house of cards. The assumption was, by a lot of investors, that the price of housing would continue to go up. It didn't, and the house of cards started to crumble. But so your question is, how come we didn't anticipate it? Well, to a certain extent, we did. And that is trying to deal with one aspect of the housing market, and that would be Fannie and Freddie. And I was unsuccessful at getting them regulated.
But there's more to it than that, Mr. President, with all due respect. Did you see my interview with Barney Frank when I called him a coward?
Yeah.
Okay? Well, but because he had direct oversight of Fannie and Freddie.
Well, but see, it's like saying, how come you didn't see the shysters like Madoff ahead of time?
That's different, though, because
but
he's a private guy, and Wall Street is dealing in the public sector. Here's my problem.
Okay.
Americans are losing confidence in their government. We saw that with President Obama in the last election.
I hope they don't lose confidence in their government. I can see why there's skepticism, but it's the only government we got.
Now, you say in your book that you had to bail out the companies, and then President Obama picks up your theme and says it almost the same words: I had to continue spending because we would have gotten to a depression. So you and President Obama are simpatico. The problem is that there's $5 trillion added to the debt in the last 3 years, from 2007 to 2010.
All I can tell you is when I left office, the debt to GDP ratio was lower than President 42, President 41, and almost equal to President 40. That would be Ronald Reagan. And I really have chosen not to second guess the president, which you're trying to get me to do.
No, I'm not. No, you're wrong.
I can only explain to you.
No, but you're wrong.
I can only explain to you the decisions I made.
Am I allowed to say that a sitting or a foreign president is wrong? I'm not trying to get you to bash Obama,
say that,
right?
But let me finish what I'm saying. The TARP that we passed said that we're going to put money into financial institutions, which will be repaid to the taxpayer with a reasonable rate of return. And most of the TARP money that we spent under my watch has been repaid.
Then why is the government, the federal government now, continuing to bail people?
You need to ask him, not me. I'm the retired guy. I'm the guy who has done my job, and I'm now home in Texas.
But you must have a theory on it.
You're trying to drag me into the current affairs, and I don't want to be dragged into the current affairs. And I don't think it's good. Hear me out. I don't think it's good for a former president to be criticizing his successor.
But here's the problem for the folks.
I don't want to be.
I know you
in the arena.
But here's the problem for the folks. The folks live in the country, and your policies in Iraq, Afghanistan, economically, bleed over until 2010. What you started and what you were involved with didn't end when you left. It continues. So that people, when they get an opportunity to hear you and read your book, they want to know about the current state of affairs. They don't want to say, look, it ended when he left, and now I don't know what he thinks.
That's your job as somebody who is capable of getting people from the administration to explain the current state of affairs. I've written a book so that people get a sense of what it was like to make the decisions that I made during my presidency. And beyond that, I'm happy to get off the stage. I'm very comfortable with this fact, Bill.
What about all your knowledge?
I'm very comfortable with this fact, that eventually there will be an objective historians that will analyze my presidency, but there needs to be time. And in terms of my knowledge, there are plenty of knowledgeable people who are capable of speaking out. And I know this comes as a shock to some, but I have zero desire to be in the limelight except for this brief moment.
No, I understand.
When I'm willing to talk with my friend in order to sell books.
I got it. All right, one more question on this, and we'll go into something else that I feel is very interesting and important. People today are worried. When they get an opportunity to hear someone like you, who is in the middle of it, they want to hear what you have to say. And I respect the fact that you don't want to get into the swamp.
Not to be argumentative, but the best way for them to learn what I'd have to say is to read my book.
Read the book. Okay, but again, it carries through. Now, the present administration has dumped a lot of stuff on you. They say, look, it's not our fault because the previous administration, they did X, Y, and Z. I know you don't care about that.
I really don't.
You don't care about that at all.
It's a tactic.
It's a political ploy, correct?
Some people choose to use them. Some people use that ploy. Some don't. And
now, Jimmy Carter, he gets furious when people dump on him, and he fights back. But you are the total opposite. They could call you the devil. They could call you whatever, and you're just going to go out to lunch.
Well, they did when I was president.
And we talked about
that. I didn't. Well, that's right, we did, and I didn't respond because I don't think it's good for the presidency to respond. And I know it's hard for you to believe that I basically ignore the rhetoric, but I do, and I'm comfortable with myself. I know I gave it my all for the country. I did the very best I could do as the president, and I'm comfortable with that.
When you look at the current state of the union, because Because I know, as far as following the country, I know you do. You couldn't be a civil servant your whole life, governor of Texas and two-term president. I mean, you just can't shut it off.
Right. I don't shut it off. I love my country.
You watch. Are you optimistic about America?
Yes, I am. No, well, right now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm always optimistic about America. I've studied a lot of history. We've been through difficult periods in the past, and we'll come through this difficult period. And
so
I'm optimistic about it.
You believe the economy is going to turn around and people are going to be better off?
I can't tell you when. Oh, well, that's a leading question, of course, which you're famous for. But the economy will turn around soon. Well, what's the definition of soon? And frankly, what my advice to you would be to ask somebody who thinks they know what they're talking about the economy. I'm not an economist. I'll tell you this. Okay, I'll give you this. I think it's important for policymakers to understand most new jobs are created by small businesses. 70% of new jobs in America are created by small businesses. Many small businesses pay income tax at the individual rate, and therefore raising any income taxes will cause there to be less capital available for small businesses, which will make it harder to create jobs.
Thank you. That's what the folks, I think, want to hear.
When we come right back from Dayton, Ohio, I will ask the president about the Afghan war, which has descended into semi-chaos. Is any of that his fault? The interview continues after these messages.